Hello, my beautiful Lady Gardens, and welcome back. Who could forget our chat with Ailsa Hitchens, UK-based menopause nutritionist and coach? We talked about her new book, Everything They Told You About Menopause Weight Loss Is Wrong. And wasn't it an eye-opener? Listen again, absorb it this time round, and put it into practice. And check out her book, which is available from her website and on Amazon. Ailsa Hitchens, AilsaHitchens.com. Enjoy this week's year in review episode of High Tea with Lady V, and stay tuned as June 10th we will be bringing you some exciting new content. Can't wait to launch our new season. We have got some spectacular speakers. So stay tuned again for June 10th, ladies. Enjoy this week's episode. Everything they told you about menopause, weight loss is wrong. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been told that weight gain in menopause is just part of the package? That's your slowing metabolism, your age, your new normal. Well, what if I told you that everything they've been telling us is wrong? Today, I'm joined by the fabulous Ailsa Hitchens, author of the game-changing new book, Everything They Told You About Menopause and Weight Loss Is Wrong. This isn't just another wellness book. It's a truth bomb wrapped in science, sass, and serious hope for every woman who's felt gaslit by the scale and the system. We're talking belly fat, hormones, metabolism myths, and why it's time to stop blaming ourselves and start underestimating what's actually going on in the inside of our beautiful, complex midlife bodies. So grab your favorite brew, or maybe that shot of vodka, and get ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about calories, weight gain, weight, diabetes, and life after 40s. This one's going to be hot, and not just because of the flushes. Let's get to it.
I have loved your book. It is fantastic. So pleased to hear that. I just love where you've gone with it too, in terms of you haven't gone so deep into the science that people start to get a bit confused, but you've just put those really good facts in. I thought I was pretty well versed on a lot of stuff, but when you've made points, I'm just going, oh my goodness, like I literally have changed my diet.
Perfect. Yeah, it's got to have some science in, hasn't it? So it's credible.
Exactly.
But actually no one really cares. Well, they kind of care. They need to know they're on the right track, but they don't need all the lowdown on it.
100%. And we both come from science backgrounds. I'm a nurse. I love all the science. I get really into it. But that's what I've realised is the general population don't.
Really, what everyone wants is obviously a quick fix.
Yes, exactly. I loved it. I thought I'd start from the beginning and then we'll work our way through the book.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I was reading it going, oh my goodness, this is what's going on with me. You think of yourself as quite fit and healthy. Then all these things that you were saying, I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I understand that if you get the spikes and the crashes, which happens to me, I'll spike, but I'm always crashing down. If I was taking a little glucose test 2 hours after eating, I'm never going to test out of range. Yeah. But it's about that spike and that crash. You want to stay within those small parameters.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be aware.
All be going on. All those people who have no idea that they have a problem with a capital P.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't know what it's like over in Australia, but people aren't given lots of information. They're told in the UK, oh, you've got prediabetes. Eat less, move more, just lose some weight. But then literally they're just not given any supportive information.
And they're not really told what that actually means as well, because people just sort of go, oh yeah, I've got type 2 diabetes. Oh yeah, I'm pre-diabetic. They don't actually really understand the consequences of what that means. I think so many people are pre-diabetic now that it's kind of become, oh, it's all right, I'll just take metformin and I'll be fine.
It doesn't always fix it, right? I've got clients who are stacked on all kinds of medication and still the blood glucose isn't coming down. And I'm thinking, actually, the only way you can do this is with diet. Don't stop taking those other things, but you can't just go on doing exactly what you did before.
Yeah.
But that's where we are in that medical world now.
I had gestational diabetes, which obviously really different. Everyone's like, what? Like, why would you have gestational diabetes? I'm not really the person they would think would have it. Interesting when you look into genetics. I carry one of the APO4 genes, and you start delving into that. It's linked to pre-diabetes. It's linked to having those spikes and crashes. I've always thought, I wonder how many people that have gestational diabetes that aren't really the people that would be in the have an APO4 gene. It would be really interesting to test that. And I suppose that's where my knowledge came from it. I remember working in the hospital system, actually it was in my training, and I said to one of the head nurses, oh, I don't think they should be eating that. And she said to me, oh no, they can eat anything they want when they're on medication. That's the message that the medical system is giving pre-diabetic or diabetic people. Type 2, like type 1 is a very different disease. But I just found that so incredible.
Well, we have that with cancer in the UK. It's when they're going through chemo, so they're in the active stage of the disease. It's like, you can eat what you like. By the way, have loads of sweets and sugar if you want. And it's like, well, no, that's actually the opposite of what we want to be doing. It's just like, let's not feed anything that we're trying to get rid of.
Sugar, glucose actually feeds the cancer cells. I know it's changing a bit in Australia now. They're telling people to fast or do exercise after chemo because the cancer cells can't live without glucose, whereas our actual cells are able to survive without glucose. It's such an interesting science and research that's happening. But we digress, which I probably think will go down lots of rabbit holes. So starting off, you're going through a bit of a tumultuous time midlife, and then you've realised, my goodness, I'm a ticking time bomb. I need to change something. Is that where the birth of this book has come from?
I guess it's the frustration. I should know better, right?
Yeah.
As a nutritionist, I've been practicing for 10 years. I have a lot of nutritional knowledge. And before that, obviously, I had the training and then I had all the geeking out myself. So I felt like I should have known better. And yet there were some things that were a real surprise for me. But where the idea for the book came from was that feeling that women were being really badly served. In some cases, they were being completely gaslit about their menopause, or they were given so much false information about eat less and move more, and they were actually doing it. And I sometimes see people who are taking it to the extreme because they think, if I just work a bit harder, if I'm better at it, it will start to happen. And it's like, well, if it's not happened in the last year, if you're still stuck, it's not going to happen. And then they're under eating while still believing the stuff. You can go into any grocery store in the UK and assume that the way we're supposed to eat is by having low fat and diet stuff and low calorie. That there was so much information that was incorrect, causing so much misery, that I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to write something that says this is exactly what it is. And the difficulty at this midlife stage of life is really what people want is they want a magic pill, and there isn't a magic pill. Yeah. Or they want it to be kind of simple. Let me just get my head around it. I'll just eat less and I'll move more. And that's an attractive proposition because everyone understands what's involved, and there's only really two concepts, aren't there? But it's not just about losing weight in menopause. It's about fixing your metabolism so that you can have more energy and all the other stuff that isn't weight loss. Yeah. And you can't just eat less and move more. So there are lots of things that you want to have on your radar. And that's where it came from. It's like, well, what are those things? How can you work out what applies to you and put it into a plan?
So talk us through how it all goes wrong at 40. We've touched on insulin. And one of the stats that I read in your book, which is just mind-boggling, is that 73% of women between 45 and 50 will be overweight. That's a huge stat.
Yeah. I mean, you can walk down the street and see it, right? But we're in this two worlds that it's right that we shouldn't be the fat police. We shouldn't be shaming people. And some people are absolutely okay with where they are. Some people are okay with where they are, but they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. But there are many people who, we will both see that actually care very deeply about this. The problem is, it isn't just a question of how we look. It's not just about that. We can be okay with how we look, but there's no arguing. Of course, you can be skinny and very, very unhealthy, and you can be carrying a bit more weight. It's protective for some things, but the more overweight you are, the greater the inherent risk is of other stuff being a problem. Because when we get to that very overweight and obese category, it's actually very damaging to your metabolism because it's a very inflammatory condition. And this is the opposite of what we want. So in our sort of 20s and 30s, we would, maybe starve ourselves a bit, and we wouldn't be caring about what's going on in the future. By the time you get to, let's say, 50, you're already thinking about that next decade, and the chances of having some kind of debilitating condition, whether it's arthritis or other problems like that, one of those chronic health conditions, is quite big. And if you are also carrying too much weight, it's compounding that. And what that's doing is it's stealing those later years that you will have. And if it's not stealing those years, it's paving the way for those years of your life to be less good quality, healthful years.
Well, I know stats in Australia, and I think overseas as well, in America and the UK, you can walk into any nursing home and the proportion of women is so much higher than men. And yes, we might live longer, but we're actually not living it in a better way, in better health. And be that it's related to estrogen and progesterone and testosterone as well, there's such a link there on other things that we can do now, like in our 40s and in our 50s, to negate some of those things. Not everyone wants to go out on the HRT, but there's so many other things that we can do. And that's what I really loved about your book. It was like, here are these tools that you have that you can really utilize to make those years better. I think we sometimes think we're going to be dying for the next 40 years. There are women out there making huge waves, and Martha Stewart didn't even start her career as Martha Stewart, as the brand, until she was 50. There's so much.
I mentioned Martha Stewart as well.
Oh, you do too, don't you?
I did. Yeah.
I love talking about Martha. I think she's just amazing what she's achieved.
I think one of the tricky things as well about the fact that there's so much knowledge, and it's hard to know what is the knowledge that applies to me and my personal situation. What do I need to be interested in? Because you've got shouty people on Instagram who are saying one thing. You've got the supermarkets and the big food and big pharma pushing their agenda. So I'm setting the record straight, which is, of course, great. But the other thing that people are up against is, okay, I'm already working, or I've got kids, whether they're small or big, or I haven't got kids, or maybe I do, and I have aging parents. Yeah. So we've got, as women, we are in a really tricky situation time-wise, because we are, thanks to emancipation and advancements, we have got better jobs, more responsible jobs than our grandmothers used to have, who didn't have any jobs. Their job was rearing children, and that got easier as the children grew. And then life got easier. But actually, often we're climbing the ladder, doing our great things, more is expected of us in the line of work. And it's still pretty much the case that women do a lot of the chores around the home. They've got the caring responsibilities, whether it's children or aging parents. Yeah. And everyone says we should have a social life, and everyone says we should sleep more. Yeah. How am I going to fit all of that in? Yeah. So there's the knowledge, but there's actually, how are you going to do it?
Yes.
So there's a whole part of my book which is about how to actually get the stuff that you need to be doing that applies to you into your life, because pretty much we can do anything for 2 weeks. Like, we can do a hard exercise program. We can live on whatever rations. We can just hang on in there for 2 weeks. But then the difficulty comes with consistency.
Yeah, it's so true.
And that's the pill, isn't it? That's like, oh, what? I've got to keep doing this.
Yes. And how do we make it a habit? Like, it's about habit forming. Yeah. It's so true. And that's what I really loved about it. It gave you this really good guide. It gave you a good guide of why as well. I thought that was great. It was like, I'm not just telling you this because, you know, this is what I think. It's like, here's some science behind this, like why we don't want to have insulin spikes, why estrogen is really important, why all these things happen. And then here are the tools, and here's strategies to help you. And then here's a section where you can actually write some goals and work through it. I really loved that. It gave you a whole view of everything.
I'm hoping that by the end of the book, women will be able to design their own plan. And I give some suggestions about where to start. Obviously, if people are buying the book because they want to lose weight, they'll want to start with the food. And that is a great place. But I suggested, if nothing else, if you don't know where to start, why not start with sleep? Because that's lovely. But that kind of goes against definitely what's going to be needed. And hopefully where I've introduced the science to explain why it matters is we need to do something differently. There's all this programming about eat less and move more, and it doesn't work, or it is a tiny bit of the picture because everything shifts. So if that isn't the way forward, if you can't have that simple formula about, well, I'm just going to cut the number of calories, you know, this pervasive idea, I'm just going to cut 500 calories a day for 7 days, 3,500 calories, that's 1 pound of weight loss. By the way, no one even knows where that came from. There was an obesity researcher called Zoe Harcombe back in the UK, and she made it her business to, I mean, she's a PhD. She knows how to research this stuff, and she made it her business to look into that. She could not find a single point of source material that gave any credibility to that. Nobody knew where it came from. So someone made it up. And yet it's something we really believe. So the people will need to, the women reading my book will need to have a little bit of a mindset shift because the old stuff definitely doesn't work. And probably most people listening to this will have worked that out. They might still be thinking that they've done something wrong and they've just got to push a little bit harder, but it doesn't work. There are different forces afoot.
Yes, you see a lot of women eating protein. I think women have been trained to undereat, right? We've been trained not to eat protein, to eat like a bird. And realistically, metabolically, that's probably one of the worst things that we can do because we're not men. It's interesting the information coming out about not working out fasted as a woman.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I always used to do that. I was great at fasting. Great at fasting. I'd get up, I'd go for a run.
And I would be shaking afterwards because I haven't eaten. Especially, you know, vary about your cycle and where you sit as well. When you are younger and even as you get older, some of the things that came up in your book for me personally, I was like, oh, tick. And I would see myself as this fit in my 40s woman. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm waking up at 3 a.m. with insulin drops. I'm getting that 3 p.m. crash. My metabolic flexibility, I used to think it was good. And now I'm going, oh, my metabolic flexibility isn't as good as I thought it was. And I really liked that you touched on breakfast and that being something really important for women and maybe fasting if they are doing that 12 to 14 hour window of not eating. That breakfast being one of the most important things and actually gearing that with protein as opposed to carbohydrates and cereals.
Yeah. So in the food work, such that it is, if you start working out what you're going to have with breakfast and you have a protein-rich breakfast, and I get that for some, if they've been doing a long fast and skipping breakfast, the science is changing all the time. We're discovering new things as they apply to women all the time. Far better, if you like a fast, to bring your evening meal earlier. But the difficulty with that is, of course, that is when our family time is. But if you start the day with a sugary cereal, there is only one way it's going to go, which is about cravings and chasing food. And even doing that one piece can really set you up for having a better day and for having less food noise. So food noise, obviously, it's a big thing that I guess it's the same over in Australia. We're hearing lots about the weight loss drugs. And one of the things that people are talking about is that quieting down the food noise. And the food noise, of course, has a lot to do with that chemistry about if your blood sugars are all over the place because you've been following government advice pretty much worldwide for decades.
This stupid star system in Australia. They spent billions, all this money on putting stars on all the food. And they've put the food into categories as well, so you can get 5 stars, but it's Milo. And it's like, how is Milo getting 5 stars? And it's because it's in the confectionery category, so it's the more healthier version of sugar.
Yeah.
And what is crazy is then people who don't have the understanding and are following this silly star system are going, oh no, but Milo's 5 stars. And it's like, no, that's actually not, it's not 5 stars. Like, you just cannot drink Milo every day.
Yeah, I mean, we had a big slimming group. I don't know whether it's worldwide, but a big slimming group that had sins. So you'd have your core eating stuff, which was entirely wrong for women over 40, because it was sort of like, eat whatever you want of pasta. It's a free food. And then we had sins, and sins were treat stuff that you could bring in, and they had a certain number of points per sin. So you could have a certain number of these treats a day or a week or whatever. And a can of cider was the same as having some avocado.
What?
Yeah, it made no sense. And it encourages people to, on calories, of course, that's what we're doing, is it we're making choices based on not changing our diet, but trying to shoehorn all the things that we love to do into the rules. And it's not, of course, that you can't have any of those things. I mean, life would be so much poorer without Easter eggs or birthday cake and things like that. But we need to recognize that the system we may have used before that might have included daily chocolates and daily bowls of cereal, it's not that you can't have those. It's not that judgment, morality, good and bad. It's about workability, and it just doesn't work in our midlife bodies.
What I thought was really good that you touched on as well is how you eat things. So if you do want to have a dessert, eat your vegetables, eat your protein, because then that's going to mean that you're not going to get this huge spike when you do have your more carbohydrate, sugary products. And this is where I think the data you get from a continuous glucose monitor is so incredible, because things that spikes one person doesn't spike the other, and we're so individual.
Yeah.
Interesting to see that difference. I think it's the Asian population, their blood glucose generally doesn't spike when they eat rice. Whereas when you look at more of the Western population, their blood glucose is spiking quite considerably. So it's interesting to see what you react to as well. I know personally, I found if I ate chicken first, I could have something sugary and that'd be no problem. It would almost bring my blood sugar down, having that protein. And I loved how you talked about snacking as well, because that is definitely what I do. If you have that quick sugary snack, but if you haven't had the protein first, you're getting this spike and you're crashing. You're better to just actually have protein and then have your dessert. So if you don't want to give up things, look at the way you're going to eat them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the glucose goddess is big about that, isn't she? About the food order really matters, but also just thinking about snacking. If you have problems with blood glucose, if you're in your mid-40s beyond, the chances are you may have something going on with insulin. And every time we eat something, no matter what it is, our body is making some kind of response. There's something that's going to happen with blood glucose, and probably something that's going to happen with insulin, even if we're not having a sugary snack. So really what our body wants is we want to have fewer meals. I don't mean one meal a day and all of that. I definitely don't buy into that. I'm very much a sort of 3 meals a day, but proper meals, and rests in between, because our body needs to reset. It needs to reset for digestive health. It needs to reset for our metabolism. And the grazing throughout the day, which we were told maybe 10, 15 years ago that grazing was a good idea. Well, grazing is a terrible idea if you're over 40, because your body's constantly having to do something. It's never getting a break. And actually, in order to lose weight, the mechanism by which it happens, although there's lots of things that we're up against, is we need to have all the glucose to be run down in our bloodstream. Then the body will take it from our muscles. Then it needs to break open the stuff that's on our body. But it will only do that if there's no glucose, if there's no insulin in our system. So if we're constantly topping up throughout the day, there's not a point that our body is even going to start using anything that we've got stored.
Because I noticed you mentioned that every insulin spike leads to glucose being stored as fat.
Yeah. I mean, the body is great. It has all these built-in mechanisms to keep us alive. And having too much sugar is not a good thing. So it's going to store it away and it stores it as fat. And then when things start to go wrong with insulin and with our blood glucose, it's mainly with insulin, having chronically elevated blood glucose for too long, not just because we had a piece of cake on somebody's birthday, but having this happen over and over again, bits of our body, like our pancreas, get a bit exhausted by it all, and they don't respond, and our cells stop responding in the same way. So our body's having to send in more and more insulin to get the job done. So glucose can be hanging around for longer in our bloodstream than we want it to be, and that creates problems, low-grade inflammation. We think it's just about whether I'm having a snack or whether I'm having the cake or whether I should or shouldn't have eaten after 9 o'clock at night. But actually underneath it all, and I use lots of car analogies, which always amuses me because I'm so basic. I know nothing about cars. I can literally fill it up with fuel and drive it. So I can't do anything else.
Yeah, that's about as much as I can do. I don't even like putting petrol on my car, to tell you the truth. They need to bring back the Bowser where someone like does it for me.
Yes.
I literally hate it.
I'm on that.
Do have to put petrol in my car. But I get what you're saying. It's like you're not fueling your car like 10 kilometers or 10 miles. You're fueling it once it's utilized its tank of fuel. And basically, that's what you need to do with your body. You want to bring it back down and then fill it back up when you've utilized the fuel that you've already got in there.
Yeah. Do you know one of the things that I think is the hardest thing? And it's not just about in this area of health, but in life, when we want to do something, it's really hard to be 100% responsible for yourself. It's just uncomfortable. It's annoying. It's exhausting. I was just hoping not to do it or not to think about it. But actually, we've drifted too far. This is my personal view. We've drifted so far that we expect the state and our doctors to be able to fix everything for us. Probably because we've become used to it, but also because we're so time poor. But actually, we can stop the downhill slide when it comes to women of a certain age, but we need to take our own personal responsibility for it. And I don't always want to be responsible for my own health. It's annoying sometimes, but that's what it takes. And this is one of the reasons it's so hard.
As you said, we're in these midlives where we're looking after aging parents, we're looking after kids, we've got big jobs, there's all this stuff happening in our lives, and sometimes we're like, oh, do I really have to think about that? That's just not my responsibility right now, and someone else will fix it and I'll get a pill and it'll all be okay. And it's really hard initially, I think, to educate people that that pill doesn't necessarily fix everything, and there's a lot of longevity issues, and I know we've talked about insulin quite a lot, but that metabolic issues create so much more. And we're talking Alzheimer's, we're talking cardiovascular disease. It probably has something to do with osteoporosis as well. There's so many things that metabolic disorder then starts attributing to, and it's not just diabetes. I think the people go, oh yeah, I've got diabetes. Like everyone's got diabetes, so it doesn't matter. That's normal, but it's not normal. It's your body in a metabolic crisis, and then it starts affecting so many other things as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned in the book that a lot of column inches are given to cancers in women, you know, breast cancer, people walking and doing events, and that's great. I'm definitely not saying that people shouldn't do that. And the stats are high that most of us are going to get cancer at some stage. However, in terms of dying from things, you're more likely as a postmenopausal woman, which is pretty much if the age of actual menopause after you've had 12 months of not having a period, if that is 51, which it is in most developed countries, then, you know, that you've got a lot of life, and a lot of life in which you are at far greater risk of cardiovascular disease. And we don't talk about that as much. It's right that we should care about menopause and we should care about hot flushes, but these are very much driven by our metabolism.
Yes.
They can be improved a bit by HRT if women want to take it and they're able to take it, but it's not going to fix everything because it's a metabolic problem. That these issues with insulin are causing, to a great extent, the flushes, the brain fog and things like that. Of course, it is a bit of a simplification, but you can't just rub on some gel or pop on a patch and all of the menopause symptoms will fix themselves. So we have to do the food and the lifestyle work, like reducing stress and sleeping more. And we have to do that not to just get rid of our menopause symptoms, but we have to do that so that we are not ramping up the risk of cardiovascular disease, that we're not ramping up the risks for Alzheimer's, which is a massive killer in women. And it is linked to, it's not just about, I can't do anything, I'm going to have it or not have it. A lot of it is linked to, well, two of the biggest drivers are inflammation. What's the big driver of inflammation? Processed foods, being overweight. It's linked to blood glucose control or lack of blood glucose control. All about eating the things that are best, all about exercising in an appropriate way to enhance your metabolic flexibility, which is about lifting weights. So it becomes a much bigger thing than I want to lose weight or I want to fix my menopause. It becomes about, hey, I don't want to die of a heart attack. I don't want to get Alzheimer's. So all of the things that I'm talking about, I mean, you've got to call your book something, haven't you? You've got to have a catchy title, but actually it is about so much more.
Yes. Then, it's just menopause. There's so much more to it. And I thought it was interesting too, because you touched on gut bacteria as well, which obviously in the last 10 to 15 years has had a lot of research. It's really interesting in what occurs there. But you also mentioned that the balance of estrogen and progesterone affect the hormones in your gut, which unbalance your gut bacteria. So we need to use that food to then build that gut bacteria back up, because that will be changing as we go through the change as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we can't just say, well, I'm just going to carry on exactly as I was doing, but I'll have a probiotic.
Yes.
There's one particular gut bacteria that I mentioned, which is called Akkermansia.
I've got a note on this, and I was about to Google it, and I read the next page, and you're like,
yeah,
I want to Google it now. I'm like, you totally read my mind. I was about to Google that. I'm like,
because that's the natural thing, right? Isn't it? It's just like we want to have more Akkermansia, because Akkermansia, I mean, I see this. I do a lot of stool testing, or I organise a lot of stool testing for my clients, and I'm looking at what's going on in terms of what are the bacteria levels. And in virtually all midlife women, I see very low levels of Akkermansia. And we know that that's related to metabolic health and weight loss and being the right weight and all of those things. So the natural instinct is, oh, I'm on it. Oh, look, I can buy it. But actually, you're far better to eat a better diet than to supplement it, because PCOS, greater risk of Parkinson's. So there are some things that we don't want to just top it up and cause a bigger problem. So this is like eating, I think, without saying, oh, we should eat more polyphenols. If we ate more colourful veggies, we would probably make sure that we were covering most of the bases.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible, right? I went through a stage and I was thinking to myself, I've really got to do this again. I would get every veggie that I had in my fridge. Kale, let's just carrots, like all this sort of stuff. Put some apple in it as well. I just blend it up and have it in the morning. And how that made me feel was incredible. Because like here's this big boost of fibre as well. Here are all these polyphenols too that are just going through your system as well. It was amazing, and I thought, I've really got to get back onto that, especially after reading your book and going, these are so important. We tend to forget about fibre, or we think about fibre as cereals.
Yes, because it's got it written on the front. It's high in fibre. It's a marketing term.
Yeah, and you've got to get your fibre from fruit and vegetables, or especially vegetables. And how much fibre we need. When you read that, you go, my goodness, look how much protein I need. And it's like, look how much fibre I need. And really, you just don't even need the carbohydrates so much unless you're this elite athlete, right?
It's like nature's carbs, aren't they? Because fruit and vegetables are, strictly speaking, carbohydrates. Now, I used to play a game with my kids when they were little. They have completely outgrown it. It's probably in about 2 weeks they outgrow it. So I play it with myself now, which is, if I go to the supermarket, I try and buy something I've not had before. Yeah. So, sometimes they're unmitigated disasters. I will never buy another dragon fruit. I will never buy another cherimoya or custard apple. I've been reading a book and it was in there. I thought, I'm going to get that. And sometimes just challenging yourself to do something a little bit different can be beneficial for our gut, for our health, but it also helps lift us out of the rut that everyone falls into. I remember when I first started training in nutrition, one of the things that we had to do at the very beginning of the course, we had to start keeping a food diary. And having geeked out on all the stuff before I invested in myself to train, I thought I had a pretty good diet. But actually, when I wrote it all down, the vegetables that I ate were quite limited. Yeah. So we tend to rotate carrots, broccoli, beans and carrots and broccoli. We're rotating the same few vegetables every night.
It's crazy once you write it down and start tracking it. It's not even about tracking what the macros and micros are and all of that. Just writing it down and you look at it because you go, yeah, I eat really well. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, that's actually not as well as I thought. Because when I'm just forgetting to eat as well, which is one of the worst things you can do. And they're grabbing that snack that will just get me through, which is going to be giving me some spike and some crash. And I'm thinking, oh no, I haven't really had that many calories. But in midlife, that calorie restriction is actually hindering my body.
Yeah. The only time that I use calories as a measure of anything with my clients is to make sure they're having enough food. Let's just get that stake in the ground and let's see where you are. So we'll MyFitnessPal for a week. Don't do anything differently. We just want to see what you're eating. How much are you eating? And at the same time as my book was going through the process of being printed, etc., I created some food journals, which, for exactly the reasons you say, sometimes you just want to write the stuff down and write down exactly what you've had so you can use it as a plan, but you can use it to just track what you're eating. What was really important for me was it didn't look like a science project, because when you go to Amazon or wherever and you buy food diaries, food journals, they've all got space for macros and calories, and I just find that really off-putting. I wanted to create something that I could let my clients use that wasn't about fill in all the calories, but instead it had, what have we eaten? How many times have you been to the loo? How much water have you had? How have you moved today? What's a good thing that's happened? What would I want to change? What hasn't gone the way that I wanted it to go? And also, what have I done for my relaxation and self-care? And there wasn't anything that existed that allowed you to put all of that information on and track how you were doing with it on a weekly basis, so that you can have, ultimately, with this consistency piece that I was saying earlier, that you can have this transformed life, because consistency is very boring and very annoying, but it does actually really matter.
I think that's really interesting to be able to track it like that, as opposed to, as you said, tracking the calories and tracking everything. Like, how do you feel? Have you exercised? Have you gone to the toilet? Because that's a really good indication of how well your diet is working for you, really.
I even put a little thing at the top with symbols about what's the weather been like.
Yeah.
Because we respond to all kinds of different stimuli, don't we? On rainy, cold, miserable days, we might do certain things differently.
And that's very big in the UK. I know. I lived there many years ago. And when you're in that winter period, you don't get as much sun. Everyone's a little bit duller at that time.
Yeah.
So that affects your mood, which will probably affect how you eat and what you're eating. And it's being conscious how that's affecting you. And I feel like if you keep that same healthy diet, you mentally are feeling better and you're conscious that, yes, it's dark, but I've still got this strategy to look after my body and my health. And I dare say that would have a positive effect on someone's mental health as well.
Yeah. And also, you mentioned that the changing seasons. I know my exercise equipment was in the garage. And when it gets to November, between November and March, that's not a good time for me to be exercising because I've got to go to that freezing cold place. But just looking and seeing, it's like, yeah, okay, so this is a danger point for me. How can I mitigate that? Bring it in the house. But we also have, I think the other thing that's important is, and the same goes with holidays, right? We have agreements with ourselves about the things that we're going to do in our health. I'm going to eat like this, and then I'm going to exercise like this. And we just say that's how it's going to be. And what we don't do is we don't go and regularly look and see whether those agreements are still valid. So let's say for the European winter when it's cold and miserable, do I still want to be exercising in the same way? So I have an agreement that I'm going to do this, this, and this, but now it's winter. So what's my agreement with myself? Am I going to do some things differently? What does that look like? And it's the same with food when we go on our vacations, on our holidays. It's like, I'm doing this. Oh, but I haven't accounted for, I haven't looked to see, is that appropriate to have those rules and agreements with myself when I'm on holiday? Well, no, it isn't. So what happens is we break our rule, we break that agreement with ourselves, and we let ourselves off the hook really easily. It's not like if I had an agreement with you, Kate, to go running every day, I would be there. I wouldn't let you down. Yes. But if I had the agreement only with myself, I'd let myself off the hook. But every time you do that and you break an agreement, even with yourself, you are impacted by it. Only by a little bit, but and you just end up feeling bleh about things.
Totally do. If I miss my morning exercise, and I've been really slack recently, what that does to me, it's like the whole day I'm annoyed at myself because I broke that agreement with myself. Even if I go, oh, I'll do it this afternoon, or I'll do it at another time, I'm still annoyed because the agreement was you're going to get up and exercise.
So sometimes we need to revisit the agreements that we have about our movement, about what we're eating. With the European, huge changes in weather between the seasons, then we don't want to eat the same kinds of things. We want to just maybe behave in different ways. So we need to look at, is my agreement relevant for the season that I'm in? And also with women, if you are still cycling, what our body needs changes through the month. So at the beginning of the month, when we've started our period, we're bleeding, we feel a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more, even if we've got period pains, by and large, when we've got out of that bit, we're feeling more creative, more alive, more vibrant. If you like to fast, you'll find fasting easier at this stage. As we move through the cycle, we're still on fire, ovulating, and then we get to that follicular phase. And from the point of view of its nature's intention is we want to hunker down a bit. We want to have maybe a slightly more carby diet, but we want to have some more of nature's carbs. I think sweet potatoes rather than cookies and cakes. And we're feeling a little bit more insular, not as chatty, not as outgoing. And it makes sense from an evolutionary point of view. But if we don't have an agreement with ourselves about what that month looks like, and we're trying to follow really rigid rules, that's when we feel dissatisfied, we feel meh, we start feeling like we're a failure.
It's really interesting to talk about that because I know personally, I feel as soon as I ovulate, it's all downhill from there. And then that last week, it's very hard to exercise at the same intensity. I think it's really important for women that still have a cycle and obviously still post-menopause because there's a whole different way of exercising, I suppose, then as well. But having that agreement to go, okay, this is the week that maybe you're not going as intense, but don't get yourself down on that because obviously that's the week where we're a little bit bigger. We feel like, we're like, oh, you feel a bit from
the water retention's come in, bowel movements have slowed down. You feel it's fulfilling a purpose in nature.
Yes.
We're not machines.
But Part of your book was quite interesting too when you spoke about after ovulation phase and then you can get estrogen dominance and how that relates back to food and gut health. I found that really interesting, and I suppose then you can carry that through into menopause as well, and there's this real change in your gut, as well as if you have had more PMS, PMD symptoms, you probably struggle even more because that cycle is already quite up and down.
So as we get older and our estrogen is declining, progesterone's falling much faster. So it's not so much the presence of how much of this one or how much of that one, is how it relates, how the ratio relates. If the ratio is out, we have to say unopposed estrogen now, but we have estrogen that isn't correctly balanced with the right amount of progesterone. It can cause you to put on weight, to store more weight than you want. It can also lead to fibroids. When we have unopposed estrogen in younger women, it's a big factor in endometriosis and conditions like that. And some people, of course, aren't very good genetically at getting rid of estrogen. So it's just sort of being recycled in the body. And some of the biggest things that we can do, or one of the critical things that we can do, is we need to poo.
Yeah.
It's not going to fix everything, but people really underestimate having a good poo every day. So drinking enough water and eating enough fiber so that happens. And that is the way that any excess hormones come out of the body.
I was not aware of that. And when you do have that later phase of your period, or before your period, your system's just not working like it usually does.
Yeah, exactly. It slows down. Sometimes a little bit of magnesium can be quite helpful for that, to just, because everything's muscular, everything from eating food, it's all the muscles contracting. People massively underestimate going to the loo. So we want to drink lots of water so it's possible, because any toxins that are water soluble, they come out in your urine. Any toxins or spent hormones that are fat soluble come out in your poo. So we need to make sure that is happening on a daily basis. There's all these toxins around us, most of which we can't do anything about. Traces of pesticides, fumes, synthetic fragrances. There's synthetic estrogen on till receipts, coating. It's everywhere, so we need to get rid of it.
Receipts that you get from anywhere, you just try not to handle them. It's full of microplastics and synthetic estrogens.
I remember doing one of the first study papers I had to do years ago when I was training, was looking at these xenoestrogens, these fake estrogens. And I was looking at till receipts and what happens. And when you wear hand cream, the studies show that people who wore hand cream, the uptake of those fake estrogens was much greater, which makes sense because you've got something that is already absorbing into your skin. So you're taking that stuff and it's going in further. Fascinating.
That is fascinating. And you do think that there are so many period disorders, I think more so now than there was years ago, and hormone disorders. And it's just simple things like that are affecting females, especially that synthetic estrogen.
Yeah.
Is affecting females in micro ways, right? And it's, as you said, if your body clears it or doesn't clear it in a certain way, is that building up and causing other issues?
I do lots of testing. I don't know whether you know the Dutch test, which is the dried urine test. I do a lot of that in my practice. I do a lot of DNA tests, and I sometimes find people get fixated on what the tests say, which is as it should be. When people have paid for a test and they want the interpretation, how does it relate to my body? But actually, we need to work on phase 3 detoxification, which is going to the loo. So some of the basics we should all work on. And one of the tricky things about the time that we're in at the moment is so many people are kind of low-grade sick. It's like, oh, I'm so tired. Well, it's not how it should be. It's not normal, but it's very common. Oh, I get really bad period pains. Oh, I only go to the loo once a week. Oh, same. So, it's a common thing, but it's not normal. We're lulled into this false sense of security. Some stuff, everyone gets bloating. Everyone feels like that after a meal. Well, lots of people might, but it's not how it should be.
Yes, there are lots of people that have this experience. It's totally important to understand that. And I think that's where there are so many people that go, oh, well, I eat that and I get that effect, and someone else will eat it. Go, no, I eat it, it's fine, I never have anything happen. But we're so different in how all these different things. So someone else's normal isn't necessarily your normal either.
So we have this N=1, don't we?
I feel that women especially, there's so many more layers to our wellness than men in general, because we are having fluctuations monthly for a majority of our life, and then we go through this change, and there's a lot of fluctuations that happen for us, and so our normals are so different as well. We tend to then just get sort of grouped into, you know, like when you get your blood test back and it's like, oh, you're within range.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
The thyroid test comes back, it's like within range, but it's actually totally not where it should be. It's not optimal. And I think that's been lost in the years too, like women comparing to men, and then what's the range that women should have post-menopause or during menopause. It's not just about hormones, but all those ranges change. We've got so many more fluctuations.
And also I think the way that women are often, I mean, this isn't science, but this is just me making an observation about what I see. Women are very different to men, often inside relationships as well. I'm going to say the majority of the clients that I've seen, when we've been talking about the piece about self-care, about de-stressing and doing things just for the joy of doing them, because it's relaxing, because it's fun, because it stops us feeling that we need to numb ourselves with food. When we do more self-care, we have a better experience. It feels better to be us. Now, so many women, they become really disjointed and disconnected from what they love to do. And when I'm talking to women about what they love to do and how they can practically get that into their lives, it becomes a bit of a head-scratching moment, because I think, I've got no time. And then we're looking at what goes on within the household.
And I think when women take the time, they feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
That's also one of the reasons they don't take the time, because they sort of take it, but the whole time they're like, oh, I should really be spending this with my daughter or my son or my husband, or there's always this guilt attached to it. I think I was listening to Michelle Obama being interviewed, and she said something quite interesting where she just had her 2 girls, and she's like, Rocco's like out there at the gym, and she's like, what's he doing it all? And then he said, but you've got to make sure that you do that. That's for you and that's your time. And I think she just sort of sat back and went, actually, I do need to do that. I need to not feel guilty about not being there for everybody else, because we tend to feel that guilt when we do take time, or there is obviously a lot more pressure, I feel, on women. But enable ourselves to actually take it and not feel the guilt about it.
I think it was Mel Robbins, who I was listening to one of her podcasts, and she said, no one is coming to save you.
Yes.
And that just hit me like a truck. It was like, my God, that's so right. So taking that into where I started thinking about self-care is like, yeah, of course you can have it, but you've got to say that you want it, and you've got to go and do it. It's like Saoirse Barak saying, yeah, I don't have any problem with that, but you've got to do it. You know, I'll do what I've got to do. But we have all these things go, oh, I can't and I shouldn't and I mustn't, and all these things that we are put upon. And I was really guilty of this in my marriage, and it really pissed me off, actually, that, you know, there was him having all his leisure time, and it's like, yeah, but when did you assert your own requirement for leisure time? And it's like, okay, yeah. So no one's coming to save us. We need to take responsibility for who we are being, what we are doing, and who we are being in that moment. Who are we being in this world of midlife, menopause ladies? What are we doing? What do we need to claim for ourselves to get our health back, to have the results that we want, to have the life that we want, the energy that we want, the happiness that we want? No one is coming to save us. No one's just going to go, hey, Kate, here we go. It's all there. You help yourself. We've got to go, no, I want that. I state my claim to that, and I'm doing it. And actually, I know, just bringing it back to the self-care, that when I've said to my clients, okay, well, we're just going to go in and we're just going to take that. We announce to people, so our self-care, for whether it's meditating or going on a walk or reading a book, we announce to everyone so that they don't come in and interrupt our self-care. Okay, mummy needs such and such, or I'm going off to do. We announce it to people like it's a thing. No one cares. Actually, No one cares. And we've created this whole big story about how we can't and we don't have time and the world's going to collapse. The world will stop spinning if we take this half an hour for ourselves. And people are just, they couldn't be less interested in it. They're like, oh, right.
My brain circles into, oh my goodness, if I have someone else pick up the kids and they have a car accident, that would be my fault because I wanted to take like 30 minutes to go to the gym. My husband would never think that. It would never go through his head. It's like, yeah, that'll be okay. And I'm like, you got me car accident and said, that'll be my fault then. And what will I do?
You've invented this whole story. That, yeah.
And now I'm at the gym going, oh my goodness, I've got someone to pick them up, and now I'm feeling like ridiculously guilty because
indebted. How can I repay the debt?
Fictitious car accident. I get back and they've literally had the best afternoon ever, and like you said, you went in the car shouting at us because you needed some self-care.
Yeah.
Circling back to stress, because I know we talk a lot about our bodies can't handle stress in menopause, but I think it's really important to, a lot of people don't talk about why that is. It comes down to that adrenal glands and cortisol levels, and also the adrenals start to take over making estrogen, releasing a substance that then turns fat cells into estrogen. I think it's really important for people to understand why that is, because everyone says, you just can't be stressed. And it's like, but that's just such an overarching statement. There's not a metabolic reason for that.
Well, to start with, most women are very good at just taking on all the things. Oh, I'll do it. Or we can't say no, and boundaries, etc. And we don't recognise, we have in our mind that stress is going to be a big thing. Like, I've got to be bereaved or divorced. And firstly, no, that's not the case. Just the relentlessness of being asked what's for dinner every day does it for me. Yeah. But so there's that generally, plus we're less resilient because of our changing hormones. Now, we know that declining estrogen can create more anxiety, more feelings of overwhelm, less resilience. And in fact, I mean, this is anecdotal, every single woman that I know personally and professionally, the reason they've ended up taking HRT is because of the anxiety piece. So we know that happens. It's this sort of overwhelm and lack of resilience is a well-known symptom of perimenopause. And that the declining estrogen just means that our adrenal glands, as you say, they're having to pick up the pace because we need estrogen. If we're not going to have it rubbed on ourselves as a gel or whatever, we need estrogen. So lower amounts are made in the adrenal glands. And it then becomes a real fight for what is the hormone that's being made. When we're stressed, the reason why we don't want to be stressed is if we think about caveman times or cavewoman times, the stuff that happens when we're stressed was all geared to being the victor ahead of the saber-toothed tiger. All the stuff like our bodies would be flooded with any glucose so that we had the energy to run away. Our blood would thicken, so if we got clawed by the tiger, we wouldn't bleed out. Our heart rate would increase. We'd have this laser focus. And it's important to know that these things were designed to be temporary. But actually, that's not how it is these days. So if we think about in terms of our metabolism, our wanting to not have menopausal symptoms, wanting to lose weight, the last thing we want is to have high blood glucose, because that's going directly against what we want to happen. When you're in that stress situation, from a historical point of view, our physiology is saying, right, we're shutting down every single other action that isn't going to help us run away from the saber-toothed tiger. So all the other bodily functions aren't going to work properly. So we do have sometimes a stress tummy, because having excreted, we will be able to run away quicker, but we're not going to digest our food. We're not going to be able to think big picture. We're going to be thinking micro picture. And all of the things that happen in that stress response, we don't really want, it's not relevant for us now. We don't need to run away from anything most of the time. And we certainly don't want them for our metabolic health. We don't want blood pressure going up, blood thickening, all of those kind of things, because they're leading us down that cardiovascular pathway that we don't want to be.
Yeah, which is so interesting. As I said, there's so much talk about stress and people go, oh, okay, I just can't be stressed. But there's actually a real metabolic issue that is occurring if we're in this constant state of stress. It's not just about feeling stressed and that anxiety. There's a lot more happening on a cellular level.
The quickest way to become less stressed is with guided meditation, which I used to think was really woo-woo, but it's 10 minutes. I love the Calm app, but there's Headspace, there's all the other ones. It's 10 minutes with someone telling you, breathe in, now let's breathe out. In Calm, they have a daily Calm where they might tell you a bit of a story, but you're doing 5 minutes of slow breathing, and the whole process takes 10 minutes. And what that does, if you are someone who likes to measure things, I have a smart ring, but before I had my smart ring, I was using an app called Welltory, I think it was, or however you say it. But there are heart rate variability apps. So heart rate variability is not your blood pressure or your heart rate. It's the little gap between your beats of your heart. And we don't want them to be uniform. We want there to be variability. So the greater your variability, the greater variation in those little gaps. It sounds like it isn't a good thing, but it is a good thing because it shows that you're more resilient and your body is more adaptive. If you can get these apps free, you can measure yourself before and after a 10-minute guided meditation session. And you can just see how your body can change state in just 10 minutes. So being less stressed and, I'm going to relieve stress is just so conceptual. The chance of it actually happening is really quite small. And we know that even when you do self-care, the very first thing to go when you're stressed or when time is a bit squeezed will be your self-care. So this guided meditation practice, because it's just 10 minutes and you can do it whenever, but I suggest doing it at a time that, it's going to become a habit, that will change a lot. Not necessarily in one session, but in a couple. And you will definitely be able to actually see it. You'd be able to see it probably in your reactions in a blood glucose monitor. I know that my results when I was wearing my continuous glucose monitor, when I was stressed, they were significantly higher. If I was under the weather, again, significantly higher. But this is one of the ways. Guided meditation is hands down the best way to de-stress in the shortest time.
And then as you're seeing that in the glucose measurement. So it's essentially you're changing the way you're producing insulin. If you can keep yourself at that stress level, which is quite incredible. I think that's where we haven't really quite grasped that amazing ability of our brain and our body and how it works together.
And some people are much, much less able genetically to handle their stress because they're programmed to, and I'm one of those people, they're programmed to make a more pronounced response to adrenaline. So they get worked up a little bit more readily.
Yes.
And you'll know if this is you, even without genetic testing, because if you're the kind of person you can have an argument and still be thinking about it half an hour later and still riled up about it, that is a sign that probably somewhere in your genetic pathways, you're quick to produce adrenaline, which is one of the big stress hormones. It's the heart beating faster one. And it takes longer for that relaxation process to begin.
I remember when I got my DNA testing done and I was working with the geneticist and she's like, no, coffee's good for you. You can get rid of coffee quite quickly if you're not one of these people that sort of holds on to it. And then she looked at my stress response because about 6 hours after coffee, I'll get shaky. And she looked at my stress response and she's like, I've changed my tune on your coffee. Don't have coffee.
Yeah.
Actually, your whole stress response just doesn't work for coffee. You're actually getting rid of the coffee. It's how the coffee stresses your body lasts for a lot longer. And
yeah, so it encourages you to produce more adrenaline. I quite like that, actually. I probably shouldn't have coffee, but I quite like that little buzz. So you might be trending in the same way I am. If you've got worked up, you hold on to it. And there's nothing wrong. It's just having that greater understanding of how your own body works.
That's where genetically, like looking at those things and having an idea is really interesting. In your practice, if someone came to see you, and you've mentioned this a little bit in your book as well, you really play on genetic testing, stool testing, you're talking about urine testing as well, to get an overall view of what's happening with an individual's body.
I would say I do quite a lot of test and interpret because people want a test. They don't want a whole program. But if I'm working with someone on a program, then we always start with the food and lifestyle, because those tests, sometimes in order to be able to do the food work, we need to understand, particularly let's say if someone's got lots of digestive problems, we need to understand what's going on with the digestive system. Otherwise, we're guessing. Sometimes there's just some things that are really interesting to know. They're not going to define the program. So my view in the book is for most people, for many people, testing might be next level. So let's start with the food and lifestyle work, and then let's see where we are. And it might be that we want to do some testing to get greater clarity over something. I met people before who have a great appetite for testing, an almost unlimited budget, and I'm fascinated by what goes on. But actually, when it comes to consistently doing the work, they would rather get some more answers from another test than just do the basics. And the reason probably is that the basics and doing the stuff consistently is all about the exhaustingness of responsibility.
And this is where, when you're talking about your journal, that's actually part of the testing, right? Because you're talking about how you're feeling, and as you go through this detoxification or this process of making changes, and I like what you say in your book, is you can make one change, do that for a week, and then introduce something else. It's not like, right, everything needs to happen right at once. Start with protein breakfast initially, and then make your changes from there. Then it's about tracking it then. You're writing what you're feeling. If you have your cereal but the day before you've had your protein, you're probably feeling vastly different throughout the day. And it's being able to track that and understand how your body's reacting.
Yeah, and be with curiosity, right? So it's like, oh, okay, this week I had chocolate twice. And I had that, and that happened. And it's not about making yourself wrong, but let's look at this with curiosity. What happened in that week such that I did all that stuff that I didn't want to do? And then it's like, oh, I see. I barely slept. I was really stressed. I barely slept. And then that's more data, isn't it? So when that happens, and if this is happening on repeat, it's like, well, what can I put in place such that my stress levels aren't super high?
And I think that's another point when we talk about sleep and how much that affects, coming back to metabolics. If you haven't slept, when you are using the continuous glucose monitor, your resilience to any type of food, if you haven't had a good sleep, your insulin spiking, like there's no tomorrow. You've got sleep and you've got insulin that all kind of intertwine, plus you've got stress. And this is where in that midlife where our whole stress and sleep intolerance really starts to affect us.
Yeah, exactly. So I talk about tipping points. So the thing where if you get one thing right, all kinds of other things fall into place without too much effort. And there are two things nearly always. One is sleep. If I've slept, I feel like I can be bothered to make my protein breakfast. I'm more inclined to eat well and not have to prop myself up with cookies or coffee or whatever, which then has an impact on sleep later. And the other one is planning. If I've made sure that I've planned stuff, planned to have the food that I want, and I've shopped for it, there is then a significantly higher chance that I will actually do that. If I haven't, I'm going to open the fridge and there's going to be a chocolate mousse and that's all that's there.
And then you get stressed about that as well. You're like, oh my goodness, I didn't shop and I'm so stressed. It's interesting how all of this comes back. Like you say that one of the reasons you could be having that 3 a.m. wake up is because your glucose is crashing. And then it all comes back to sleep and your insulin levels and your stress levels.
Yeah.
And you can see how it can become this vicious cycle. And so affecting the way we're eating can then have this positive effect on the way that we're sleeping, because we're not getting this insulin drop at 3 a.m. So then we're not waking up. And then essentially we're sleeping better, which means we're not having those insulin spikes because we've had better sleep.
Exactly.
It all comes back to metabolics in some way.
Yes, that's what I was saying at the end of my book, where I'm saying, well, let's have a conversation about where we actually start. What do we do first? If you've got no idea and it's all a bit like, oh, help me, start with sleep. Get an early night, wind down properly, don't be scrolling, read a book, go to sleep, early night, and then you're going to feel in a much more resilient place to do whatever the next step is. So if you only focus on sleep, you'll probably fix some of the stuff that's going on because you'll feel more motivated. We all know that everything's bad when you haven't slept. You hate everyone, you're grumpy to be around, you don't make the right choices, then you beat yourself up, more stress,
Stressing your body even more because it's releasing adrenal.
Yeah.
It's a cycle, right?
Yes, if you started there, so sleep feels like a really unglamorous place to start. And I'm really like, well, yeah, so I want to lose weight. I just go to bed early, right? It's not the only thing, but it is a really great starting point.
And do you think also having that more protein-based meal earlier in the day, but also not right before bed, but earlier, just say 5, 6 o'clock, is then setting you up for a better sleep throughout the night as well because you're not having those insulin spikes?
Yeah, probably the worst thing that we can do for lots of different reasons is eat within about 2 to 3 hours before we go to bed, because then we're going to bed and all of the energy that we've just eaten is not going anywhere. It's just literally going straight to fat because it's just not going to be used. We're just going to go to sleep. But the other thing is, as our body processes the food, it's then doing work. Whereas what we want is we want to be in a rested state.
So timing your meal as part of your sleep strategy to then ensure you're getting a better sleep and then you're more resilient for what's coming the next day.
Yeah. So I call him the sleep guy, but Matthew Walker, who works out of the University of California, Berkeley, he's a preeminent neuroscientist who specializes in sleep, and he wrote the book Why We Sleep. And he recommends setting an alarm for bedtime, as well as we always set an alarm in the morning, don't we? But set an alarm for bedtime so that you don't accidentally end up scrolling on TikTok and it's midnight and you said to yourself, right, I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock.
We all do that, don't we? Yeah. And it's a really good idea because it's giving your brain that, hang on, this is the time that we've set for ourselves. It's that constant reminder. You might forget it sometimes, but it's just like that reminder of why we get up in the morning. Now we're going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, thank you so much. This has been so eye-opening.
We could be here for the rest of the night, couldn't we?
Yes, we've spoken for an hour and a half. I think we're going to have to definitely do a follow-up. I'll implement all these things and be like, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And even after reading your book, I'm like, I'm going to go back to just the way I feed my kids as well. Like, not having the cereals because you start to go, oh, it's just easy and you've got fussy eaters and I just need them fed. But you want to give them good starts to the day so they're not having those crashes and you're not setting them up for highs and lows throughout the day too, like we do.
Yeah. Kids are on it with the protein. They love an egg. They have their favourite breakfast, which aren't necessarily what I'd have, but that's as it should be because they're kids. They have a cheese muffin with ham and poached eggs. Great, they're having protein. What they're not having is a bowl of Cheerios. Yeah. And they're going to have a crash later. So
a bowl of Cheerios can just be so much worse. I've just been taught so incorrectly about that protein. And I think even just having your poached chicken in the morning, have it then. It's not about having it at night all the time.
Yeah.
You have those bigger protein-based meals at night. Really, should we be having those in the morning to set ourselves up? Because I know when I eat like that in the morning or have a chicken salad or something, I actually feel fantastic throughout the day. I'm not getting that slump. I'm not super hungry. I'm not wanting to snack. Whereas if I start with cereal, you're getting that slump and you're like, I need to snack.
Yeah, or even if you're not the kind of person that you want to eat that way in the morning, you like a sweeter breakfast, even a proper authentic Greek yogurt with some nuts and seeds and some berries, that's a great start. That's then got the protein. If you like omelettes, that's a perfect start to the day. So it doesn't have to feel difficult. If you're a cereal person, there are some very low carb cereals, but they do again tend to be quite processed. So you're better just going with nature's foods.
If that's where you desperately want to go, maybe have it with Greek yogurt, at least
your
fats and your protein in there at the same time. And
completely.
Olive oil or flaxseed oil, which I remember you mentioned as well. We could definitely talk forever, I feel.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here to be my morning, your evening.
Well, thank you.
It's been great. Lovely to talk to you.
And then if someone wants to buy your book, where are they finding it?
So they can go to Amazon. All territories, they will find it.
So if everything they told you about menopause and weight loss is wrong, so if they want to go there, they can find it on Amazon. I'll obviously put that in the show notes. And
yeah, I've got a website for my books. I've got a website for my business, which is foodfabulous.co.uk. I've also got a website for my book, which is just myname.com. So it's ailsahitchens.com. And it's got links to, I talk about some resources in the book that they can grab. And in some of the early copies of the book, the typesetter forgot to include that last page. So that's a bit annoying, but the current copy should have that in. But if people go to ailsahitchens.com, it's got the whole of the back page. It's got the whole of the resources there.
And we'll put that all in the show notes. And social media, if people would like to follow you, where will they find you?
That is Food Fabulous Nutrition, and I'm in all the usual places.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I look forward to 100% meeting you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care. See you soon. Bye. Bye.
Please note that this podcast is for entertainment purposes and informational purposes only. The content shared is not intended as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns or before making any health-related decisions. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and guests, and it does not represent those of any medical organisation or institution.